Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Shane Beamer, the South Carolina Gamecocks, making a late but massive addition to the 2025 high school recruiting class. Four-star wide receiver Donovan Murph committing to South Carolina. Really interesting prospect. We've talked a lot about him over the last couple of months. Was formerly a top 100 prospect nationally in the 2026 class. Reclassifies to 2025, skips a year of high school. There are a lot of times where you look at reclassified prospects and say, you got some questions, are they ready to step on a college football field and make an impact? You don't have those question marks with Donovan Murph. You just look at him and say that looks like a college football player at 6'2", 190 pounds. And then you look at the high school production, the last 2 years at the high school ranks, incredible on-field production, 153 catches, 2,400 yards, and 29 touchdowns. And what I love most about Donovan Murph is that I think this is a guy that can immediately impact South Carolina's wide receiver room. And we've kind of had this conversation a lot with the South Carolina fans. What are some, transfer portal additions that you like to see South Carolina make? We've been talking about adding a pass catcher in the transfer portal. What I think is unique about Donovan Murph, and we don't say this a lot about high school prospects, I look at Donovan Murph and say, not only are you getting a really good wide receiver for the next couple of years at South Carolina, this is a guy that I'd be very surprised if he did not come in day one and make an impact in this wide receiver room, kind of similar to what we saw Mazeo Bennett do for South Carolina in 2024. And let's just be quite frank about it. You look at freshman wide receivers, it's not taking them that long to translate to the collegiate level. We all just watched Jeremiah Smith go off in the Rose Bowl. We saw what Ryan Williams did, what a guy like Cam Williams did, even a guy like Mazeo Bennett, who was a massive contributor as a year one guy for South Carolina. It's not all that rare that these freshmen can come in and make an immediate impact. I look at Donovan Murph and say, I think he certainly can. Now, I want to get a little bit into the film, especially from the senior year. Like his 2024 fall, it is a very fun film study to watch. Before we do, and as always, to the South Carolina fans, it's been a blast. And a lot of y'all have been showing a lot of support the last couple of weeks, whether we're talking the transfer portal, whether we're talking the finish of that 2024 year. I've had a blast talking this team. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Donovan Murph. And again, where it starts to me is a lot of times when we're talking about high school prospects, we like to scout the physical traits and talk about the physical traits, which certainly matter, and sometimes ignore what they do with the shoulder pads and helmet on Friday nights. Donovan Murph has been dominant. You go back to the last 2 years, 153 catches for over 2,400 yards, 29 touchdowns. That's about as productive as you'll see a wide receiver coming out of high school. And then you look at Donovan Murph as the wide receiver, and this is probably what I love most about Donovan Murph is he's a box checker. He's a complete wide receiver. You look at a lot of wide receivers coming out of high school, and you'll get the track and field times. The wide receivers that are really, really darn fast, but maybe that's all they can do right now. You get the wide receivers who are really, really big and physically imposing, but really struggle to create separation or run clean routes. You look at Donovan Murph, and you're saying he checks off every box you want as a wide receiver. You love the frame at 6'2", 190 pounds, and I think that's wrong. He looks closer to 200 pounds at this time. Really smooth mover in and out of his breaks, creating separation, and he has that vertical speed too. And with that big frame, he's very comfortable going up and making plays for his quarterback when that football's in the air. There's not really anything Donovan Murph can't do. And when you combine the speed and the size, he's a really tough matchup for opposing defensive backs. And you start getting into the high school film. It's really fun to watch because even as a reclassified kid, like he's really clean. I mean, really clean routes. You see the movement. So a little stop and go. Hey, really, really physical too. I mean, you see this defensive back trying to get hands on him. You see a lot of young wide receivers struggle when defensive backs get hands on him at the collegiate level. It's really hard to knock Donovan Murph off his route. Deals with contact, and when that football is up in the air, he's 6'2", 190 pounds. He's going to go up and make a play. Very comfortable, high pointing the football, going up and making a play for his quarterback. Really does good work vertically down the field, which we've talked about consistently. That is what Lenore Sellers really excels at. Getting a wide receiver that can work vertically really good fit in this offense. How about this? And again, he's a big body that can run fast in a straight line. Look at the separation he can create in man coverage. I mean, that's as good as it gets for a guy that's 6'2", 190 pounds. And so him getting in and out of his breaks, creating separation, that's special too. Again, contested catch, that's probably where he excels at the most. Really big, really physical at the catch point, but he complements it with some really, really nice route running, working vertically down the field, tracking the football. Again, he's fast. I don't have any track times to verify the speed. You talk about football speed, and a lot of times we get distracted with track times and forget to watch these players on the football field. I don't need track times to tell me Donovan Murph could cook down the field. Continue to work through it. I'm going to see try a little press on the line of scrimmage. He's going to run right by both the defensive back and the safety. Tracks the football really well. He's coordinated. You can tell that. I mean, it's not very hard for him to track the football in, creating some separation. Once again, they love working that little pump and go action, stutter and go, you might call it. He's a complete wide receiver. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway when you get into his film. He excels working vertically down the field, but you see plenty of times where he's able to create some separation too. I felt like this was the year, his senior year, essentially his senior year, should be his junior, but essentially his senior year, where he really put it all together. And then you kind of fast forward to South Carolina on the high school recruiting trail. Gotta love what Shane Beamer's doing with this roster. The last couple of years, they've been hammering the offensive line, and I think that's starting to pay dividends for the South Carolina team in terms of how well they've been able to run the football. And it was young in 2024. You saw some growing pains with guys like Josiah Thompson. But I started looking at that 2025 offensive line. That's when Shane Beamer is going to reap the rewards of being consistent recruiting the high school ranks on the offensive line. Talk about guys like Josiah Thompson. Talk about guys like Trevon Baugh and Tree Babalade, potentially a guy like Marky Anderson. Year 2, year 3, that's when you see the offensive linemen really start to put it together. And I think that's what South Carolina is going to get in 2025. I think what's most interesting here is that wide receiver position was probably the position that South Carolina probably hasn't done what they wanted to on the recruiting trail. That's changed in 2025. Some of my favorite commitments for South Carolina are coming in the pass catch room. It starts with a guy like Malik Clark. I mean, 6'2.5", 185 pounds, runs a 10.5 in the 100-meter dash. You scroll down to a guy in Lex Cyrus coming from the state of Pennsylvania, 10.4 in the 100-meter dash. They got what? 3 guys, Malik Clark, Lex Cyrus, Nick Arbor, that are all going sub 10.5s in the 100-meter. I mean, that is some serious vertical speed that South Carolina is going to be putting out there in the 2025 year. Love the method. Love the roster building that we're seeing from Shane Beamer. And you can tell that culture is in the right spot. And now we're getting this roster in the right spot. You got your quarterback in Lenore Sellers. I think you got a really solid crop of offensive linemen. This is a really big get in Donovan Murph because I think he directly impacts your 2025 year. I'd be surprised if he's not a day one guy. But I love how this roster's come together for Shane Beamer and the South Carolina program. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.